Like if you're a bear or a lion or I don't know, a falcon, whatever, just be that. And maybe you're like or maybe you're a snake and you start having these little snake movements and you're like, you're hissing and you're like, oh my God, this is so stupid. What if someone saw this? No one's seeing you.
Hello, and welcome to Fuck Yeah, the podcast where we say fuck yeah to intimacy containers. I am one of your hosts, Robin, and I am here to introduce Fuck Yeah Shorts. That's right. In addition to our longer episodes, we're also going to be releasing shorter episodes. Not all listeners make it to the end of every episode, and frankly, that's some of my favorite content. That's where we're recapping the interview and sharing ideas, and even doing segments and some teaching moments are in there. So we decided to start doing some shorter episodes to introduce some of our past content that may have been missed by listeners, as well as bringing past ideas into our current conversations and seeing how we've evolved, how the ideas change over time. So we're doing a little bit of a curation for you today, where we noticed that in our last episode, we ended up talking about the container, the kind of intimacy container that kink can provide, so that you're able to do things like play kinky with your friends or play kinky in a way that doesn't end up being necessarily sexually intimate or romantically intimate. And this made us realize that this is an ongoing subject that has come up for us many times on the podcast. So today I've curated 3 little segments for you. The first one is going to be the recap that we had after our conversation in season 2 with Amy Baldwin of the Shameless Sex podcast. She gave us a lot of information. We had a great conversation with her, and our recap conversation between Sarah and I ended up really talking about this idea of kink containers. We go over the playground study, which is fundamental in our understanding of kink containers. And then Sarah has us do a very intimate exercise that can be found in Barbara Carellas's Urban Tantra book. So watch out for that. A little bit intimate. Maybe a little too intimate for some of us that are dissociative clowns like myself. After that, we're going to jump forward back into the conversation that we had with Amy Baldwin, where she gives us another exercise about finding your inner sexual beast, which is very entertaining. And after that, our last segment is Sarah recounting when she actually did the sexy beast exercise. So you get to hear about the exercise, and then weeks later, months later, we were on the Shameless Sex podcast, and Sarah brought up how she did the exercise that Amy had told us about in our episode. So you'll get a little bit of a clip of that. And also, I just want to mention we have a new theme song. I would love to know what you think of it. Each of the segments are going to be broken up with my little theme song stings. I made this with AI, and I was just shocked at the results. I kind of love it. I would love to hear what you think. So please email us at fyapod@gmail.com or send us a DM on Instagram or a TikTok at fuckyapod. And I think also on Threads, if you do that sort of thing. All right, so here you go. I hope you enjoy our curated shorty shorts. Fuck yeah. The big takeaway for me, I think, is really the talking about the containers was really fascinating to me. Like, you introduced the idea of containers to me through witchy stuff, and creating a container for the magic and all of this stuff. And I think I even have some magical containers from you. And so then to hear her use the idea of a container, but it being like a therapeutic safe space, I just thought that was pretty fascinating. And then I think you mentioned something about kink containers. And it just really seemed like this whole thing of like, if we're going to be vulnerable, we need to trust the environment and trust the people that we're with, that they're not going to go beyond our boundaries and respect our consent. And the idea, that she was talking about her nudist space, it's like part
Mhm,
of that
mhm.
container for nudity is that the fences were built with this in mind so that people can't peek over, or there's all these outdoor nudist things that you can do in that space. And so that container is just primed for nudity, and that you can make these containers in other spaces as well. I think it's a nice way to think about it.
Well, I wanna call out your love of, like, physical containers,
That's true.
and that
Yes.
I love that you also love the energetic containers.
Any old
Um
container will do.
Yeah, so a couple of things stood out to me about that in terms of kink space. When she was describing the work that she actually does with clients, I was like, "Oh, like, how do you can create a container around that?" And then that got me thinking about kink, and it's like, "Oh, I think maybe the power dynamic in kink." I mean, obviously the negotiation, the communication, but that, like, really strong power differential
Mhm.
is kind of a key component of keeping that container. But when I started teaching, because I teach as part of the sex educator certification program. I do the kink affirming sex ed module in that program, like introducing new educators to kink and how you talk about kink and like why kink is okay and that sort of thing has really evolved for me over the, I guess it's been 4 years now that I've been teaching as part of that
Mhm.
program. And the study that you shared with me has been so integral in me thinking about kink containers, the playground study with the
Oh,
kids, where
yes.
they bring
Wow.
the teachers bring the kids to the
Yeah.
playground, they observe them in spaces without fences and with fences. What they
Mm.
found is that with a fence, the kids will
Mhm.
play all the way up to the fence,
That's right.
and without a fence, they stay huddled around their teachers, their caregivers, etc. And that it is that like actual physical boundary
Yes.
container on the playground that creates the safety to go like right up to the boundary. And
Mhm.
so I think that the idea of containers is really like an essential concept of kink, or at least it
Yeah.
has become that for me.
Wow, I had forgotten about that study. You know who told me about it originally was sex nerd Sandra when they were
Oh.
training me at the Pleasure Chest in teaching. And
Wow.
I found it so fascinating, then I looked it up, and sure enough, it's exactly like they said. But yeah, that's so interesting how boundaries really help us. I know as an artist, when I'm trying to be creative, to have no bounds is really difficult. But, I think that's
Mhm.
why some people will be like, "I'm a painter. I work
Mhm.
within these boundaries. I'm a
Mhm.
painter who does this type of thing," or whatever. For me, it's like I can do so many different things, it's hard for me to decide on what I want to do. But if I have an assignment, like I did really well in art school, I'm like, "Give me the assignment," or like I have this weekly assignment of editing the podcast, and it's like within that container, I feel like I can flourish because I
Mhm.
know what I'm working with. It applies to so many different spaces, even like the container that our kids go to school. The
Yeah,
school
yeah.
container, the way that they behave there, and what's expected of you in your different containers.
I love you calling out that you learned that from sex nerd Sandra getting trained at Pleasure Chess, and then that
Mhm,
piece of information passed on to you, and then
mhm,
it passed on to me, and now I actually can't tell you how many, I mean, hundreds maybe of new sex
mhm.
educators, or I mean, not new, like a lot of people go through the certification program who are quite accomplished, or have gotten information about that study, and it just reminded me that that was one of our original motivations for this podcast, was the idea of like oral storytelling, and that it has as much value as, textbook learning, and that Sandra was one of the very first people that we wanted to have on the podcast. So I'm just having a little moment. It's
Yeah.
nice. Speaking of really amazing sex educators, Amy mentioned Barbara Carellas.
Mhm, yes.
Okay. Barbara Carellas. I have had the privilege of being part of a facilitated retreat with Barbara, and her book
Urban Tantra, Sacred Sex for the 21st Century. I feel like has gotten a lot of flack from the Gen Zers because it is not like Tantra is a very binary
Sure.
practice. And this was like a book, I want to say it was written in the 90s, that was really trying to kind of expand the container of Tantra.
Right.
If you read it now, it is not as intersectional as we would want it to be.
Right.
I'm going to say that as a preface, but I just want to give such huge shouts to Barbara Carellas, who I think is, just really an incredible human. And I do still pull exercises from this book. So I thought we could do one.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, so I opened up to a page 112, and I laughed to myself because I was like, I've done this exercise and it makes me uncomfortable.
Ooh, sounds
So I'm
fun.
going to share it with everyone. It is an eye gazing exercise.
Oh, wow.
The idea of this exercise is that you eye gaze with yourself.
Whoa.
Yeah, so now you can tell why this makes me a little uncomfortable because I have a hard time even with the self hug. So, going into this, you know that it might make you feel exposed. It might kind of feel a little silly. You might have a strong urge to look away, but give it a try. See what comes up for you. It's really a trust exercise. So what
Wow.
you do is you hold a hand mirror in one hand, or you go to the bathroom mirror and you place your other hand on your heart.
Oh, boy.
You look into the mirror. I know this is a tear jerker, y'all. And you look into your own non-dominant eye. So if you're right-handed, your left eye is your non-dominant eye, and if you're left-handed, your non-dominant eye is your right eye. And you breathe. And as you gaze into your own eye, have an intimate dialogue with yourself. Try to
Whoa.
speak it out loud. If it makes you feel too uncomfortable, say it silently. And as you become more comfortable with this kind of intimacy, it will become easier to speak out loud. So try using the following as a guideline for your dialogue. Just complete these statements with as much truth and love as you can. So you're gazing into your non dominant eye and you are saying to yourself, I love you for blank.
Uh-huh.
I forgive you for fill in the blank. If I really loved you, I would.
Feed you well.
Because I really love you, I will.
Wow.
And then you sit with those feelings and notice what comes up. So we got to try it. The intimate container is really centered in becoming intimate with yourself. And so I'm curious if there's something that you've done with clients that is an exercise that folks can try that is about knowing yourself or not judging yourself or just getting grounded in you.
So I have a fun example about this, and it's over Zoom. So this example will be more accessible for people. I'll start it with I really like helping people tap into their ultimate inner unique wild human, whatever that is. And wild meaning like what kind of animal, what kind of sexy animal are you? We have all of these different variations. For some people the word sexy doesn't work for them either. So like, but that like primal part of yourself that can just be all body and just like move and go with whatever this animal body wants, needs, and desires with yourself, because you're only abiding by your own boundaries and consent within that moment. So on screen, if I was working with someone, I would do a very like small scale way of guiding them through this so they have a taste of it to go and do the deeper practice on their own. Because I mean, I'm sure I could guide it the deeper practice on their own with me on the screen. And I have a feeling most people wouldn't fully go into their ultimate expression of it. I think that deeper research in your own bedroom or cabin in the woods or wherever you can go to like unleash the awesome inner beast is where the power comes in. But the question is like, well, how do you do that? And so for folks listening, the smaller scale version that's very much more like PG, very light, is kind of going into some sort of meditative space, meaning no, we don't need to be like this transcendent om shanti whatever. More like you're ideally closing your eyes, taking some deep breaths, trying to feel your breaths and in your lower belly expanding in and out. And I like to start with actually breathing in the chest for a couple breaths, then moving it down to the abdomen, then moving it down to the lower belly, because I think that it helps people see, oh, I can move my breath, I can move my focus. And then I'm like, now let's bring it to the genitals. Try breathing into your genitals. And they're usually like, what the fuck are you talking about? I can't breathe in my genitals. I'm like, let's just try this. So taking a deep breath that you imagine, you're still feeling your lower belly, but it moves beyond your lower belly in to your pelvic floor. And if they're unaware of the pelvic floor, then there's a teaching moment. And that is, let's feel your pelvic floor. Pretend like right now someone's going to walk in, you're peeing and you need to stop and clenching up. Oh, there it is. That's your pelvic floor. But now instead of that, try pushing your pelvic floor down as much as possible so that wherever you're sitting or standing, your genitals are trying to get to the ground as far down as they can. That's the full release. And so when you're breathing into your pelvic floor doesn't tighten and go, ew. Instead, it's opening up like a balloon, or you can imagine it being a balloon. You can even assign a color to it. If we're doing like chakras, you could be, red for the root or orange for the second chakra, and imagining this like orange balloon expanding. Your pelvic floor pushes down as you inhale, and then your pelvic floor kind of like, I don't want to say tightens, but like relaxes and releases as you exhale. And from that place, once you feel like you're in that, you now can feel your pelvic floor all the way up, through your head, and focus on this mostly full body. And, we could bring the legs and feet into it, but we don't have to. From that place, then if you could like just let your body start to move, when your eyes are still closed, how does it want to move right now? Maybe your hands want to start just getting curious about your hands, as if there's someone else's hands moving on your body, but they are moving how they want, not how you think they should. So do they want to move fast or slow? Where are they going? What are your hands feeling when you're touching your body? But also, what is your body feeling when you're touching your hands? Whoa, mind blown. Maybe they want to like grab at some things and like pull at your hair or make their way to the genitals or not. And just letting this be this natural experience of curiosity. And that's the small scale version. And then of course, slowly come out, everyone, don't do that. And you'll be like, oh, here we are back to reality. But then behind closed doors, the homework would be that plus get on the floor, like not the bed, not the couch, not the chair, get on the floor. And you could be clothed, naked, whatever you want, but make sure you're safe. No one's going to walk in. You feel comfortable. Do the same thing, but on the floor, like on your back, even your belly, something like that. And then after you're doing that kind of hands, body start to sway, get curious about this like animal part of you. And it's going to look and feel ridiculous. Like if you're a bear or a lion or a falcon, whatever, just be that. And maybe you're like or maybe you're a snake and you start having these little snake movements and you're like, you're hissing and you're like, oh my God, this is so stupid. What if someone saw this? No one's seeing you. Like no one's there. So you remind yourself that, okay, no, this is just for me. I feel silly, but sex is silly at times, right? So letting that like keep it to expand and expand and expand. And if you want to, bringing it to touching yourself, your genitals mostly. I mean, we're touching ourselves, but our genitals, touching yourself in whatever way feels best and pleasurable in your genitals. And if you get to a point of orgasm, let that animal roar. Like this is why when you're like, hey, housemates, can you leave for 2 hours so I can someone watch the children? And I personally have had really powerful experiences with this. I had a client who had these orgasms. This is a penis owning person that he felt was very like, kind of not satisfying. And he did this practice at home. And he messaged me the next day. He's like, Amy, I'm a bear. And I was like, you're a bear. Tell me more. And he's like, oh my God, I'm a bear. And I had like 10 mind-blowing orgasms, and it was the best thing ever.
Wow. Bear orgasms.
And then it transferred into his sex with his partner, where his partner was wanting more of his like expression, more of his voice, more of feeling more of his, not just passion for this partner, but more of him expressing his like, ah, here I am. And I've never heard back since. It sounds like everything's fine.
He just had to find his inner bear. I love it. Oh,
it was
that's
one
great.
session. I was like, that is the most successful session I've ever done with anyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a share that is somewhat off topic, but not really. Because I just remembered that we had you on the podcast and you gave us a few exercises, Amy.
Oh, that's right.
And I did it. I did your sexy beast exercise right after we recorded the podcast. So we had Amy on the podcast on, it aired August 24th, in fact, today. And we were, obviously picking Amy's brain for all of her amazing training and knowledge that she has gone through. And so we were like, hey, can you give us some tips and some of your coaching tools? And you shared the sexy beast. Like you gave a really great grounding exercise, and then that you get into a totally private space and you get on the ground, like on all fours, like whatever it's going to take. And you just start like touching your body and just really let whatever is going to come out. And suddenly I realized we finished recording and I was like, oh, no one is home right now. I live with my fiance and my daughter. And so like to have the house to myself for hours was like, oh, it's a Friday. Okay, well, that exercise made me feel a little uncomfortable when I thought about it. So that means I should probably go do it. So I did. And it was so fantastic. And I guess it's like, it also ties in a little bit to the red flag. Maybe this is what made me think about it, because one of my things that I'm doing right now, I'm red flagging myself in that I'm like overly reliant on sex with my partner as my source for sexual expression right now. And like, I know how to have a good, rich sex life with myself, but I've sort of abandoned it recently because I love I love sex with my partner so much. Like we have amazing sex. And so I was like, okay, this is good for me because she's, she does physical labor. She's tired. It was like Friday. I'm like, she's going to get home and she's not going to want to like fuck it out, but I've got like some pent up energy. So I just like noticed my limbs. Like I was like, I love my limbs so much. They're very long. Like I'm noticing how long my limbs are and they're so great. And then it was sort of like it was becoming kind of bird-like. I'm like, in my head, right, thinking that makes a lot of sense because I love birds. I really relate to them. Like whenever I see like migrating birds soaring overhead, I'm like, oh, that's so freeing. But I was like, but that's not totally it. I was like, if I just went with that, that's me letting my head take over. Like I have to just let my body keep doing this thing. And then I discovered, oh my God, I love my hair so much. I started like flipping my hair around. My hair is like going all over my body. So what I came to eventually, after a long time, by the way, this was awesome. Such a great exercise. I think I'm a flying centaur. Yeah, so that was I then text Robin. I sent I sent Robin some pictures. I'm like, I think this is my sexy beast. Oh, it was so great.
Thank you for tuning in to Fiercely Independent Media. Fuck Yeah Podcast is hosted, edited, and produced by Robin Jennings and Sarah Tom Chesson, also known as my mom. Theme music by Suno AI. Your support means a lot. You can give to the show and receive perks at patreon.com/fuckyeahpod. You can also rate and review the show or share it with a friend. You can reach us at FYAPod at gmail.com. Bye for now.